Hi, my name is Megan Wheeling, and I will be doing my presentation on Tamora Pierce. So without further ado, let's get started. Tamora Pierce is the award-winning author of over a dozen books and won the Margaret A. Edwards Award in 2013 for The Song of the Lioness and The Protector of the Small Quartets. According to the awards website, the award honors an author as well as a specific body of his or her work for a significant and lasting contribution to young adult literature. The committee chair, Jamie Watson, said that Pierce's books and characters have been influencing both readers and writers of fantasy since their inception. Here you'll see pictured the Song of the Lioness series, which is the first series she ever wrote. Tamora was born on December 13, 1954, in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. Her parents meant to call her Tamara, but the nurse misspelled her name on her birth certificate, so now she's Tamara, though she says she definitely prefers it over Tamara. She's the oldest of three girls and even based the main character of her Song of the Lioness books on her younger sister, Kimberly. She loved books from a young age, and her uncle was the one who gifted her her very first books. Her father worked for a telephone company, and her mother was going to college to become an English teacher. Her and her family moved to California in 1963 when her father's job moved. She was very close with her father, and he was the one who encouraged her to begin writing when he heard her telling herself stories when she was in 6th grade. One of her favorite shows to watch with her father was Star Trek, and a lot of her early stories were influenced by that show. After one of her teachers introduced her to Lord of the Rings, she began writing a lot of fantasy. One thing she noticed was that there weren't many strong women warriors in fantasy and science fiction, so those were the stories that she wrote for herself. Her parents divorced in 1969, and she moved back to Pennsylvania with her mother and sisters. Moving from California to Pennsylvania was a culture shock, and she felt very isolated from her peers. She struggled with bullies, but did have a boyfriend for a few months, though she did later base one of the villains in her books on him, so I imagine that it didn't end well. She continued to write her stories, but after a fight with her mother when she was in 10th grade, she stopped. She still continued to do things like acting in school plays and writing essays, but she was no longer able to write creatively like she had done before. Pierce decided to go to school for psychology to help kids as messed up as my sisters and I were, as she put it. She went to the University of Pennsylvania in 1972 and worked several different part-time jobs that had to do with her intended future in social work. It wasn't until the summer before her junior year of college that she was able to write again for the first time since 10th grade. A year later, she went on to sell her very first short story. After that, she began taking creative writing courses, and her professor encouraged her to begin writing novels. She fell back on what she used to write, fantasy stories about teenage girl heroes. She never did graduate with a psychology degree, saying that it was due to her failure to pass the statistics requirement due to her poor math skills, which I find very relatable. She did graduate with a Bachelor of Arts, although she admits she doesn't actually know what the degree is in. Pierce moved to Kingston, New York for a brief time in 1976 to live with her then boyfriend, before moving to Idaho to live with her dad and stepmom. While there, she worked as a house mother at a group home for teenage girls. At the group home, her girls wanted her to read from her 732-page adult fantasy novel, The Song of the Lioness, but the director said it was too inappropriate. So she edited out certain parts and would frequently read it to them. She eventually moved to Manhattan to work at a New York literary agency, and while there, her agent suggested that she cut the novel into 4 books and make it for teenagers, something that she had already been doing. So she added parts, cut out parts completely until finally Alana the First Adventure was published in 1983. Writing a novel doesn't mean that the author automatically makes enough to become a full-time writer, and Tamora Pierce is no exception. In the meantime, she worked many different jobs along with her normal writing. These jobs included freelance editing, reading manuscripts, and reviewing martial arts movies. It was at one of these jobs that she met her husband, Tim Lieb. They met while working at a radio production company. Pierce worked as a writer, actor, and director, and Lee worked as a writer and an actor. They would go on to get married, and she now affectionately calls him her spouse creature. Pierce was able to begin writing full-time in 1992. Some of her works include the Song of the Lioness Quartet, the Immortals Quartet, the Protector of the Small Quartet, the Circle of Magic Quartet, as well as many others. She's currently working on her newest series, The Numair Chronicles, which I have yet to read, but I'm looking forward to it. One of the things that I appreciate about Tamora Pierce is that she always writes her characters realistically. None of them are perfect, but that doesn't make them bad people. Female characters, especially in fantasy, tend to be very two-dimensional, but Tamora Pierce's characters never feel like that, and a lot of that is because she pulls from real-life situations. She wrote Alana and the Song of the Lioness based on what she wanted to see in a female character growing up. The character Kel in Protector the Small goes through many of the same things that women in the military go through. She does this purposefully and does her best to make sure that her characters are something that young teenagers can see themselves in. They make mistakes, get angry, and go through many of the same things that real-life teenagers go through, albeit in a fantasy world with magic. Even the animal characters are based on real life. Pigeons play a large role in the Becker-Cooper trilogy, and her father raised homing pigeons when she was young. All in all, Tamora Pierce's books characters feel relatable, even if I've technically aged past the point where I'm the intended audience, there's still something that I love to reread. I read Song of the Lioness for the first time when I was probably 13, and 10 years later, I literally just recently bought the books so I wouldn't have to borrow them from the library anymore. I love to revisit the series and the worlds, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon. Here's my works cited page, and thank you to anyone who listened to my presentation. I really do appreciate it.